Hello and welcome to this lecture where we'll go into setting up Kafka. It can be really difficult to set up Kafka if you have tried to set it up locally without Docker and Docker Compose. But we will use Docker Compose and take help from the Docker Compose file from Quick Streams because Quick Streams is the library we will be using for working with Kafka in the coming lectures. So let's move on to the browser where we'll go into downloading this Docker Compose file. Go into Quick Streams docs. And inside of tutorials, there's running a tutorial and running Kafka locally. And first, it says make sure you have Docker Compose installed. So basically, if you should have Docker Desktop installed and Docker installed. So then just download this file. So click here and you can see the Docker Compose YAML file. Just copy this one and then move on to Visual Studio Code. Inside Visual Studio Code, I'm in a new project called Kafka Setup. I open up the terminal and write docker-compose.yaml. Here I have a Docker Compose YAML and I paste this in. First of all, we will clean this file up a little bit so the version numbering is not necessary anymore. I'll just remove this one and remove the dash. We start with services. We put it closer here. First of all, you can see here there's services, and when we do Docker Compose up, we will have several containers running. And one of the container or service is called broker. It's the broker that will handle the messaging, both the publishing and the consuming. We'll come back to what that means later on. If we look into this file a little bit closer, we'll see here that we have ports mapping 9092 to 1992 and 9101 to 9101. Actually, 9092 is the one that is important for you. This is the one that we will connect to in localhost. It just forwards the traffic to the Docker container from our 9092. Okay, and afterwards, here they have a lot of environments set up. We don't actually need to care about this. We don't need to go into details here. And here we have schema registry for managing schema for Kafka messages. For example, when you're using this JSON schema, you want to ensure the compatibility of the schemas between producer and consumer. And you have control center. That is a web user interface that is really useful for going into the Kafka cluster, checking out our topics and partitions. Then we have something called the REST proxy. This provides an HTTP API for interacting with Kafka, producing and consuming messages. This is useful for apps that don't support Kafka clients. However, we'll be working with Quick Streams, which is a Kafka client, so we can actually delete this directly to make our Docker Compose a little bit more lightweight. Okay, so now we have service broker, schema registry, and control center. So we have 3 containers that will spin up. And make sure that you have opened your Docker desktop. Then we can do Docker Compose -d to make it in detached mode so that I can access my terminal. For me, it started quickly because I have already downloaded all the images needed for this. For you, it may take a while. Here, you see the broker. It takes the image from Confluent in cp-kafka and a certain version. So it takes an image, and schema registry takes another image from Confluent Inc. And similar for control center. So basically we're downloading the images, so it might take some time. The first time you're doing Docker Compose up. However, for me, as I have downloaded it, it went very quickly. So let's do it like this, Docker PS. And with Docker PS, you can see there's 3 containers running. We have control center, schema register, and broker. So then we can simply jump into the broker to see what exists there. So docker exec -it broker /bin/bash. So now I'm inside of my broker. I'm inside of this Docker container. If I do ls or I do pwd, you can see it in home/app user. Here I will try out some commands. I will try out the Kafka -topics-list exception. Okay, there's some exception, and the exception says, oh, Bootstrap server must be specified. So let's do that. Kafka topics-list and bootstrap-server local host 1992, like this. And there's still an error. Yes, I misspelled bootstrap. So going back here, bootstrap with an R. Okay, perfect. Now we can see there's a lot of topics that exist already. And actually, these are the internal topics in Kafka. You can see there's several topics. It could be like 50 something. Whenever you're creating new topics, you will be able to see it here. When you do this command, Kafka topics-list-bootstrap server and localhost 1992. Here we look at all the topics. Remember that we create the topics and produce data that will be stored in the topics. This is basically how Kafka works. We'll come back later on in the next lecture on going into actually checking out the topics that we have created. And there's some more commands. Now we'll just exit here. So Control-D, let's exit. So let's go to the browser to check out the web UI. So remember that if we do let's see, I'll go back to terminal, clean this up, and docker pf, and you can see that the control center is in 9021. So let's open that one in the web browser. So now I'm in the web browser, and let's go into localhost 9021. And here, this is your control center. So this is the control center.cluster. And you can see it's like 1 healthy cluster and 0 unhealthy cluster. And here you should be able to, now it's loading, but after, let me see, there's topics here. You see there's 51 topics, and those are the topics that we looked at before. So if I'm going in there, here's kind of a dashboard of everything. We have brokers, topics, and several connections. Starting with the topics, you see you don't have any topics, and then you could manually create topics here, but we won't do that because we will do this programmatically with quick streams in the next lecture. This is just to make sure that everything works. Now you have set up Kafka. So in the next lecture, we're actually going to producing data and consuming data from Kafka topics. So this is really cool. Then you will have streaming data in the future. But in the next lecture, we'll just look at the consumers and producers so that we grasp the basics. Thank you for watching this video, and see you in the next one. Bye.